and the president saying that Iran and Israel have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire. It will be phased in the next 24 hours. We have not had a comment from the Israeli military, at least at this point, or an immediate comment from Iran at this point as well. But it seems like the president is saying that this will bring an official end to this conflict. Obviously, we saw this ceasefire coming after both sides exchanging shots at one another. Obviously, Iran launching a missile attack on a U.S. military base in Qatar. There were no casualties reported, thankfully, but this happened after Americans, after we bombed 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities just this weekend. So again, there's been some discrepancies on the number of missiles fired, but it seems like all in all, most of the missiles were intercepted in Qatar based on a missile system that they have there. So we do want to bring in Mr. Kempfer now and speak to him. So great to have you, Mr. Kempfer, for the time being tonight. Thank you for making time in your schedule. We'll jump right in right now. Some big news from the president earlier about the ceasefire. And obviously this is going to be phased in, as I said, over the next 24 hours. We don't know the details just yet, but this is big news, it seems like, right? Wouldn't you expect?
Oh, Colin, absolutely. In fact, this story's been moving so fast. I mean, it went from, retaliation where they fired missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, and then within hours, just a few hours, we have this announcement of ceasefire. What we do know, what's been announced, is that right now Iran is under a ceasefire. They're not firing any missiles towards Israel or anywhere else. They're done. Within 12 hours of that, or at 12 hours of that, Israel will stop everything it's done. I think that's in part to give Israel a chance to get all of its aircraft back to Israel. And then within 24 hours, the whole thing is in a ceasefire for however long the ceasefire holds. And I think, for President Trump, obviously it's a big victory because, he's negotiated a ceasefire, stopped a war, ended a war, suspended a war, however you want to put it. But that's kind of where we are.
And really some big news to the fact that there were no casualties on the Iranian strike. I found it very interesting, the president saying today that Iran kind of let us know or gave us a hint before they fired these missiles. That's interesting. I haven't heard a country doing so before. Obviously, it kind of, I guess, shows the respect that they might have for the United States and potentially being fearful of potentially what we might do in retaliation after this strike on Qatar's or on our base in Qatar. What did you think about that? And is that something that we've seen before?
I think the term we're talking is a performative strike, is what I'm hearing. Basically, what it is Iran had to retaliate. It's really for the domestic audience, and of course they claim, it was a devastating attack, blah 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 blah, all the stuff that goes out there. They shot 14 missiles. Interesting, at least that's according to the president. I've heard variations on that, but 14 are the exact number of these massive ordnance penetrator bombs that we dropped in Iran. So I found that number rather interesting that they did 1 for 1. For every big B-2 drop bomb, they launched a missile. But they had coordinated with the Qataris in advance to say, hey, we're going to fire these things in. Want to let you know when they're coming and so you can be ready. They apparently have back-channeled, and I say back-channel, and I say it carefully because when the President of the United States comes out and basically says they back-channeled, I don't know if it's really a back-channel anymore. It's pretty much a channel at that point. And part of it was they had to retaliate. They felt they needed to retaliate. They had to save face, so to speak, but they didn't want to cause any casualties. We had evacuated our aircraft earlier, by all reports. Our people were all hunkered down, in bunkers awaiting it, and nothing happened. One bomb they let one bomb through, one missile through, because it wasn't going anywhere. And but of the 14, 13 were stopped in the air. So they made their statement, and I don't know if it was coordinated this way, that they make their statement and then they announce the ceasefire. I don't rule anything out, but I just found the how quick that happened to be rather stunning. So maybe this thing was kind of scripted to some degree.
Very interesting, and I'm sure in the coming days we'll get more reports. I think a lot of fears probably kind of batted down tonight, seeing this ceasefire news in some sense. I know it's not over. Could obviously take a dramatic turn, as you alluded to over the last couple of days that we've seen. I did read an article, and I wanted to ask you this since you are the expert. There's been really no word out of some of our allies on the Middle East, right? Saudi Arabia. And I just thought that was interesting in some sense, not just Saudi Arabia. Obviously, Jordan has been kind of quiet, Kuwait, Yemen, and Iran seems to be, in some sense, or I guess has been a threat, right? We've seen Iran as a threat. Is there any reason why some of those Middle Eastern partners, especially ones we were just in Saudi Arabia a couple of months ago, I think the president was there as well, talking about our investments. What does that mean? Are they siding with us in some sense, not hearing anything from them, just silent on this attack? What was your take on some of this?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic. One thing is Iran is Shiite Muslim. All the countries you mentioned are Sunni Muslim. The Sunni-Shiite split is huge in the Middle East. In fact, the Sunni-Shia split is probably, in many ways, much bigger than the Muslim Jewish or Israeli Israel split, if you will, or confrontation, whatever you want to call it. Iran leads the Iranian thing, and they basically none of these countries are thrilled with Iran. They can't say it publicly, but they're actually kind of happy to see what's happening there. They're actually kind of, they won't come out and say that. It would really irritate their domestic base, if you will, or the people within those countries. But the reality is they're kind of watching Iran, proverbially get its clock cleaned, if you will, and they don't mind it. They're actually okay with that. There's been a lot of stuff actually written that they're saying they're kind of staying quiet for a purpose. The other thing too is they don't want to come out and publicly say it, because if they say that, then they could become a target. And we saw what just happened with Qatar, even though that was kind of a performative non-event, so to speak. But all those countries are nervous. UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, of course, Qatar, Iraq, Syria. There's even U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia right now. All of these countries are nervous that if they say something, that Iran might just do something really foolhardy and start launching missiles their direction. So they don't want to make themselves an unnecessary target. But frankly, I think a lot of those countries are pretty much issuing a sigh of relief right now that this thing is over, it's done, and that a very strong military lesson has been delivered to Iran in this whole thing, and that the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran has been vastly diminished.
So great to have your perspective on that, because I was wondering, what that meant without saying, much. Obviously, it can mean so many different things. So it's good to have that perspective. Obviously, a travel advisory was put out a little bit earlier, not just traveling in certain countries or in the Middle East, but just all over the globe, especially for Americans. I would assume that threat potentially could lessen over the next couple of days with this ceasefire. But obviously we saw the Ayatollah last week calling for certain cells to do certain things in some sense, terroristic type of situations. And I think that's why the U.S. State Department and our government has obviously put these advisories out. Again, another interesting part of this that we may see change over the next couple of days. What is your assessment? And I know a lot of folks, I have friends actually that are headed to Spielberg this weekend for an F1 race right in Austria. So wouldn't normally think that that's a hot spot for anything to happen. But obviously these individuals are watching this. What did you think about that? Can I ask?
Well, Colin, it's interesting. Around the world, there are obviously covert operatives of Iran. The Al-Quds force is the most famous part of that, but they also have the proxies. Hezbollah is the most famous member of the proxies, but there's other proxy groups as well. Hezbollah is pretty widely, I don't say infiltrated, but they've been operating in the U.S. for quite some time. Iranian operatives have been in the U.S. for quite some time. The FBI tries to track them down. Others try to track them down as well. I'm not saying we know where all of them are, because I don't think we do, but we know where a number of them are. A lot of times you can't prove that they're an Iranian operative, but you're pretty sure that they're probably doing something. And they have been conducting all sorts of intelligence gathering over the years on critical infrastructure, Jewish facilities. For some reason, Hezbollah seems to pay a lot of attention to Christian megachurches. That's something that's come up over the many years. Of course, everyone's leaning forward on this. They're looking out there. But with this ceasefire announcement, keep in mind this is brand new. It just happened. Those operatives that Iran controls directly, hopefully, will be told not to do something. That they will be told to stand down. Hopefully, if they don't, I think they'll backtrack that pretty fast, and you may see the whole thing fall apart. Some of the proxies, hopefully, there's enough control that they don't operationalize, shall we say, that they decide to go do a terrorist attack or something. So we're going to see. I mean, at this point, this thing just happened. I'm sure at the FBI and other places are trying to figure out what does this mean in regards to those asymmetric threats here at home or covert, hybrid warfare type threats or terrorism threats that could happen anywhere else in the Middle East, Europe, anywhere in the world. They're trying to ascertain, is that as serious a threat now as it was, say, a couple hours ago? They're trying to figure that out.
Great. I have two last things I'll ask you, at the end here if we missed anything. But I guess the next thing is, right, this is going to be phased in over the next 24 hours. By Wednesday at midnight, the president's saying that this ceasefire should take hold for both sides. Can I ask you about the sigh of relief on both sides, specifically the Israelis tonight? Obviously, I think a lot of Americans were expecting, you see it all over social media, World War III, right? And it seems like that obviously was fear-mongering in some respects. But it seems like this is kind of a reset for the region. That was, the words today used by Vice President J.D. Vance. Is this a reset? And could we see more solidified connections in that region now that this has happened with Iran?
That's a really good strategic question because it's a possibility that this could be a major reset. Look, President Trump even alluded to the idea of regime change, but there could be some shifts that happen with the regime. There could be some shifts that happen internal. You got to remember, this is not a popular regime in Iran. 80 to 90% of the population want to see them gone. They've been protesting on the streets to get them out of there. And with this war over, there was a little surge of rallying around the flag in Iran. But now that there's no thing to rally around, I think things may start to settle down, and you may see some of that hate and discontent for Ayatollah Khamenei and his regime start to burble up to the surface very fast. I think that's what a lot of people are anticipating. So that would be a potential reset if there was, some sort of internal change in Iran. The other side, too, is now the diplomacy starts. What will the negotiation look like? And I think at this point, pretty much everything's on the table. Ballistic missiles are on the table. The proxies are on the table, everything. So this could be a literally not just a regional reset. This could be in some ways a global reset in terms of what's happening with Iran. And I will say this, President Trump has done some things that frankly surprised a lot of people. For example, he met the new leader of Syria, a former Al-Qaeda member. That got everybody's attention when that happened. I don't rule anything out for what the U.S. might do involving Iran. There could be something else in the works that we just don't see, but bold moves is kind of a hallmark on the diplomatic stage, at least we've seen with this administration.
I lied. I got two more things. One of them is going to ask you about the destruction. I think a lot of Americans are trying to wrap their heads around, the B-2 bombers. We got great video of the cockpit of what those look like, the stealth, their specifications, where they came from in Missouri. We had so much information. And I know there's still a lot of media coming from Iran, from those 3 nuclear facilities. In your expert opinion and analysis, there's been a lot of talk about these bombs getting through a lot of the solid ground, right? What that looked like? Did they destroy the uranium enrichment that's there? What is your take on this? Did we and were we able to, in the president's word, decapitate their ability to have a nuclear weapon?
It's interesting. It's the terms that we use in the military that are not commonly used, like battle damage assessment. That comes easily to me. It doesn't come easily to everybody else, but I have heard that more in the last 48 hours than I've ever heard it ever said. Everybody's talking battle damage assessment. That's exactly what it is. They're trying to figure out what was the effect of those weapons. Now, those GBU 57s, those 30,000-pound bombs, massive ordnance penetrators dropped from the B-2s, from everything we've seen from the satellites, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They hit the site, they hit where they're supposed to hit with the site. There's big craters where you expect to see big craters. The problem is those cavities, those bunkers, those underground facilities are about, at least by reports, about 300 feet below ground. And you can't see that from a satellite. So they go down there, they have this massive energy release, with the explosive force. And if those cavities collapsed and everything was completely, caved in and there was nothing left that was operational, we really can't see it from the surface. So there's going to be a big intelligence gathering and assessment period here to figure out what the effect was, and that'll involve signals intelligence, human intelligence, every type of intelligence collection, well beyond just electro-optical with satellite pictures, as far as what's going on. The other part is we're going to look at the other sites, and then of course there's this kind of extraneous report which has not been confirmed that Iran has said, oh, we moved all that stuff. Well, part of it, I'd say, is Iran, of course, would say they moved all that stuff. They don't want to admit how bad the damage is. They don't want to admit to their own people that they just had their own nuclear capability taken off the map. So they're kind of putting out this little disinformation piece, a little bit of face saving. However, we got to track it down. Maybe they did move stuff. Maybe there is stuff stored in another location. That's going to be a big discussion. And by the way, I anticipate that will be part of whatever the diplomatic negotiations are to allow UN inspectors and probably U.S. inspectors free access across Iran to find out if there is any nuclear material held anywhere in the country. And you might see, some sort of negotiated thing with a very stringent inspection process going on. So at that point, I'm now into speculation. I don't want to get ahead of myself on whatever the diplomatic outcome of this thing is. But that's a long way of saying everything did what it was supposed to do. Did it actually destroy everything in Iran that could be used for building a nuclear weapon? That's what we're trying to ascertain now.
Perfect. Great answer. I think everybody is just wondering about that. And I was asked that question earlier today. So it's great to have you on to ask that. Last thing is, what else are we missing? This is such a convoluted issue, and I don't want to miss anything. And again, you're the expert. And any other things that come to mind for you to let folks know that are important with this?
Well, I wouldn't be flying through Doha or Dubai anytime real soon. I have to tell you, I'm overseas right now, and I was just in Doha a couple of weeks ago flying through. So this is not some remote visual I have of the sky over Doha or anything like that. What I will tell you is it's been very disruptive for any air traffic going through the Middle East right now. And I would say if someone's planning to travel in the Middle East right now, you might want to rethink your plans if you don't have to go or go through the Middle East just because of the disruption. Let the ceasefire really take effect and make sure that air traffic is flowing smoothly. Those are huge hubs. Doha, Dubai are massive air hubs. And so I'd say you need to look at that. But the other part too is we're going to see how this plays out. I mean, there's a lot of things where this could go sideways. It wouldn't take much. And so everybody's going to watch this closely. But what's very interesting is there's a lot of pressure. All the countries in the region, but I think all countries in Europe and elsewhere are really behind this. And I think Iran, they were kind of running out of steam. They didn't have much left in inventory. So there's a lot of reasons why Iran may find a way to make concessions now that they couldn't have made, say, a day or two ago.
I have got to introduce you correctly here, sir. I'm sorry. You're a retired Marine intelligence officer with more than 24 years of experience. This is Mr. Hal Kempfer, the CEO of Global Risk Intelligence and Planning Incorporated, who is taking the time, even though he is not in America right now, to spend it here on WCNC Plus. We certainly appreciate you, sir. God bless you, and be safe on your travels. And hopefully you'll join us again on WCNC Plus.
Sounds great. Thank you, Colin.